6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. It all began after the first month we started dating, and I don't know why I didn't end things right then and there. While I was taming a shower, he looked through all of the photos on my laptop and yelled at me cause I still had photos of me and my ex. I didn't even remember, cause I don't look at those photos and I guess I was too lazy to delete them. Also, I don't use that laptop so often since it's slow.
So, yeah.
I wasn't being sentimental. I've always been a nosy person and I admit I stalked his wall, his exes, even his parents, but it was all public info. I've been alone with his laptop / phone etc, but I've never ever even thought about reading his private conversations. I wouldn't do that to anyone. He doesn't care, though. He memorized my iPad password and he read everything, including some really private posts on Reddit. He yelled at me and broke up with me. He occasionally lurks in my Facebook account, because I'm dumb and I'm always like, no, he wouldn't do that again, but he always does. Today I was logged on our shared laptop and I saw in my FB app that there was some activity going on 40 minutes ago, while I was taking a shower. I looked the Chrome history, but he had deleted everything. I lost it and I started crying and he had the audacity to blame me for his trust issues and said that there is something I'm hiding, since I'm reacting this way. I tried to explain I have nothing to hide, but it's just horrible to feel uncomfortable at home. I can't even sleep properly anymore because I'm nervous if he'll decide to randomly read my messages. He scrolled maybe months of my FB searches, which is really embarrassing, and yelled at me again. He said I must be hiding something since I'm so upset. I don't hide anything, and I never gave him a reason not to trust me. Once he dumped me and I grabbed a beer with an old friend and he found out. Blamed me for cheating on him and even complained to my mother. I go to therapy every week, not only because of him, I have other issues. There was this group session and I met a boy who has similar problems to mine and I felt that finally I'd have someone outside therapy to talk to. He's not my type and I didn't like him in a romantic way. I just felt we could be friends, but my boyfriend found out we've talked once, because he was snooping again OFC. And again yelled at me. He said I was a cheater and that's why he had trust issues. I've always been faithful and I didn't deserve this. I changed all my passwords, but I'm tired of feeling uncomfortable in my own home. He went out and told me I deserve this and he's right to invade my privacy and I have no right to be mad. I don't know what to do anymore. I finally picked up some courage and ended this pathetic excuse of a relationship. 2 days ago he came with his mother, OMG, to collect his stuff and also took the laptop he gave me as present. Which was pathetic. My mother is disabled due to a neurological disease. She was diagnosed in her late 30s, and I remember that she was sick and needed help. I used to really look up to her as a super mom who could overcome any obstacle. That was until my father died. My father died over 10 years ago when I was still in high school. At that time my brother and I lived with my parents. I got a job when I was in high school after he left, cleaning the house, mowing the grass, buying food with money from work. Paying bills when I could, the minimum wage is low, and cooking dinner for my mom and myself almost every night. My brother was rarely at home, except to sleep or because he needed money. Over the years, my brother has been in and out of prison dozens and dozens of times for everything from drunk driving to drug possession to stealing from our mother to assault. He is currently incarcerated. No one mentions him or expects anything of him, except my mother who, in violation of a court order for her own protection that she herself asked for, sends him money and speaks to him weekly as well as sends letters. Back to my father's death, a 7-month bout with illness. Almost 2 years after my father's death, I graduated from high school and went to college out of state. I sent money to my mom when I was in college, and I distinctly remember, for example, using my scholarship I got in December to buy Christmas presents for my mom and brother, because I knew they wouldn't have anything if I won't buy. No one reciprocated, but I did not expect this. To be honest, I didn't care either until it became the norm over the next decade. That very Christmas, I was barely 18 years old. And I was collecting pennies to buy a cheap refrigerator after I returned home for the winter holidays with gifts. Only to realize that there was no food in the house. My brother, in a drug-fueled rage, tore down the Christmas tree I had bought and decorated and threatened to kill himself if I didn't give him the money because no one loved him, and that would prove that I cared. It is important to note that even during this time, my mother continued to let my brother, who became a criminal, back to the house. I'll try to skip my college and graduate years, but suffice it to say that I met my current husband and spent less and less time at home. When I was at home or when my husband and I were visiting, it was like this: clean my mom's house, buy mom food, cook for mom, take care of my mom. I was and remain very firm with my mother that I would not let my brother in my life as he threatened to kill me. Over the prescription cough syrup, threw me down the stairs and broke down the door to get to me. And some of the money I had at the time. I have no doubt that he will try to harm my child, my husband or me in order to get what he wants. He told me he would find me and he would teach me a lesson for his perception that I wronged him for not giving him money. And I have zero contact with him. I have blocked all numbers that have anything to do with him, including friends he calls from outside the prison. P.S. My mother let him take my number from her phone. I told my mom for years that I didn't want to have my brother in my life until he stopped using drugs for at least 1 year. To date, he is unable to do so. He stole tens of thousands of dollars from her. She always says she won't let him back into her house, but she eventually forgives him and the cycle repeats. The next year, when he was released again, she told me in no uncertain terms that he would not live with her, but admits that she keeps in touch, sends him money, and thinks it is the devil in him that makes him addicted. He will return. I offered to help my mom move closer to me since I live in many states. My husband and I even asked the realtor to come out and start the process of registering our house so we could find a house with space for my mom. My only stipulation was that she not drag my brother into my son's life. She categorically refused. She also refused to go to nursing homes, despite the fact that I went to her of my own free will and received excellent recommendations from her doctors. Now that she had surgery this week, my family is out of the slums. To be honest, I'm outraged by this. I had people who couldn't even send me a mutual Christmas card and told me that I was neglecting my mother, refusing to take time off from work and go to her place to take care of her. They don't care that I don't have days off and that I will most likely lose my job. One even stated that I wouldn't put groceries on my desk. I wouldn't work for such an employer. It's easy to say those words, but say it to my hungry baby. They said, "Who do you think took care of you as a baby?" And frankly, it hurts me. Sometimes you have to learn how to deal with life. You can't just ignore it, because getting on with life means losing your job. Walking away from my toddler in his growing up years and taking care of my mother, I guess? You can probably tell at this point that I'm fed up. I am in a stalemate when literally the only surviving family members tell me to quit my job, my family, my young child, to take care of my mom and help her. They also refuse to give a timeline, saying it will be as long as she needs it. I am expected to take care of her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no questions asked. I also feel strongly that they resent my mother for asking them to do me a service. Even though I have explained many times that I offered her to stay with us and have the operation here, at no cost to her, mind you. And she refused. In response, they tell me that she has the right to be close to her friends. I also tried to explain that by bowing to her at every call. They give her an opportunity, but they don't want to hear it. They don't seem to hear me when I try to explain that. For example, helping her get out of the physical therapy room a week and a half before her doctor's recommendation gives her an opportunity, and ultimately hurts her independence. She is used to everyone doing everything for her. For example, during the last visit she was very upset that I did not take her to Walmart, because she had to go there almost before the baby went to bed. It was not emergency. She wanted to look around. My mother, in all this confusion, has taken the position that although she doesn't want me to lose my job, a good daughter should take care of her mother. Frankly, I am very hostile to this statement, because my mother did not call me on my birthday before my father died. I tried to build some kind of relationship with my son. I always try to chat with them or talk on the phone. And in the last 12 years I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times she called me just to tell me about me, or my son, or ask how we are doing. If she does call, there is always an ulterior motive, money for my brother or for her because she gave my brother everything. I'm on the edge. I can't work full-time, take care of my family, and expect to hear several times a week how bad a person I am for refusing to give up everything I've worked so hard to take care of mine, mother. No matter what, I love my mom. My husband and his family saw it unfold and several people remarked, "Why are you even trying?" Meaning trying to schedule calls so she can talk / see my son. I invited her to my house earlier this month, scheduled plane tickets, airport assistance, etc. Just to watch her play on her phone or spend time playing with the dog instead of reading a book to my little one who just wanted her attention. Today, as if the last straw was needed, I called to check on her and she stated that she was going home against the doctor's orders because her dog needed her, because the dog was sick. First, he has a very minor skin condition that is almost 100% cured thanks to her friend giving him a prescribed ointment. Secondly, my little one got sick this week, meaning he didn't go to kindergarten for 3 days. And even after I told her about it, she never called to find out how he was. Just like she never called to check on him when he came down with the flu last year, or when he had a mysterious week and a half illness earlier this year that resulted in 4 doctor visits and a temperature of 104 degrees. I can't take it anymore. I am literally writing this as a last resort. My husband tells me not to talk to anyone. That's the whole family I have left except for one paternal aunt, because he sees me cry when hurtful comments and guilt come into play. He sees me trying to hide it from my child. But then I feel like I'm giving them what they want, right? Look at little Miss Potato, such a bad person and so inept at dealing with life. She just chose to ignore us all. But I can't defend myself all day in front of extended family members whom I've seen for over 10 years. And in some cases over 2 decades. Nothing I say will ever be good enough. I was told in no uncertain terms that I was a terrible person because I refused to leave my husband and young child and move across the county to take care of my mother. Postscript, I am not subject to the FMLA. My employer is not large enough and there is no comparable law in my state. I have 1 day of vacation left due to my son getting sick earlier this year. My husband gets almost 3 times as many days off, so took many more days to take care of him. In general, I do not want to lose my job or look for another one. It's a good job, it's just limited to a small company. She refused to move in with me. Either my husband and I are building a mother-in-law, or we are moving to a bigger house. Any aid agency or nursing home. She hesitates about allowing housework, but contradicts herself on the matter, telling me that Susie can help her if she needs anything, or that she has friends she can call, or, more often than not, she does well and can take care of herself. She wants help, but only when she wants it and only on her own terms. She told me that she would not end her relationship with my brother. I managed to get her to agree to a consultation after my brother attacked her, stole her car and pawned all her appliances. She moved to a domestic violence shelter but declined to press charges. This happened when I was 7 months pregnant, and when I refused to drive 20+ hours in a car. I was told essentially the same thing that I am being accused of now. She justifies my brother's behavior. He hooked up with the devil, and he can't leave him. I've talked to the Adult Protective Services counselors, and it all comes down to the fact that she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. Her doctors, although they seem to agree that she may need help taking care of herself, refuse to state that she is unable to take care of herself. Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this.